Hi everyone. David Griffiths, head of marketing at Uber Eats. I've been there for probably about 8-9 months now, but obviously from a sport perspective, massive fan. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about my passion for sport as we go through it. I'm a Man United fan, so it's a sore day for me this morning. Up early, feel pretty tired, and we lost. So great. But yeah, looking forward to having a chat to you about how brands use sport to drive their business.
Hello everyone, I'm Miles Taylor from Foxtel Media or Fox Sports and the Foxtel Group. I'm the head of sports sales here at Foxtel. Been in the business and the corporation for 10 years now, so have seen it all, I like to think, when it comes to sports rights and media ownership of sports rights. Worked with a number of brands, big brands around the country, and you know, activated a number of really large partnerships. So I think from a rights holder perspective, can hopefully add some value tonight.
Hello, I'm Patrick Whitnell. I'm the ex-Managing Director of Publicist Sport and Entertainment. I'm also the Board Director of Edge Collective, but also I'm the Deputy Chair of the Australian Influencer Marketing Council.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Tapau. I am the Managing Director and co-founder of The Disruptors. I'm also on the board of Share the Dignity. I have the pleasure of being married to the gentleman to my left. Previous to starting our business in February, I was the Community Relations Manager at the NRL for 10 years with a little trip into Clubland for 12 months as the Head of Commercial for the West Tigers. So I hope I can add some value tonight.
Evening everyone, my name is Martin Tapau. I'm a current NRL player for the Manly-Warring Seagulls. I've been playing for over a decade now, and I'm also the co-founder of The Disruptors here with my beautiful wife, and we'll be looking forward to tonight.
My name's Ben Seymour, I'm the ring-in, and I used to play rugby union a while ago and work in the gym and health and fitness space with owning a gym and hopefully a soon-to-be successful recovery franchise.
Big round of applause, please. Awesome. So look, I think I didn't get a chair, so I'm going to have to waltz in front of everyone. That's okay. Lucky I'm not too tall. We're going to kind of, I guess, unpack sport as a proposition and look at why sport is such a powerful thing. And I think commercially, you look at two factors, and one is participation. Participation in sport is huge. In Australia, I think in 2020, I read a stat earlier this morning, 90% of Australian adults have participated in sport or physical activity in 2020. And so it's a phenomenal piece from a community standpoint, a team building standpoint, and that starts from our video we saw back at school days and runs all the way through. And look, participation continues to grow. It's a powerful a driver in the value of sport. The other piece is around viewership, and I think Miles will probably talk to some of this, that, you know, even looking at KO and some of the round 1 and 2 stats post-COVID of NRL were groundbreaking and record-breaking. And I think, commercially, when you connect two things like this around participation and viewership, it presents a big opportunity for brands. And look, I'm really keen now to have a look at, what that power can do to, I guess, drive messaging. And then also look at, I guess, the different ways in. We're seeing some fragmentation there. So look, we might start with you, Miles, in looking at, I guess, how big is sport in Australia?
Yeah, I like those stats, Sam. I suppose 90% of Australians who participate or are involved in sport is a massive number. And I think our job as a broadcaster, being Foxtel and Fox Sports Group, which includes KO Sports, as Sam mentioned, is to give access to 90% of Australians, or all Australians, to these sports. And I think there is the huge opportunities for brands then to create those meaningful connections between us as a broadcaster and through to the sports themselves. Sport's massive for us from our perspective. Fox Sports and KO invest over $1 billion in sports rights every year on our top tier sports in this country, and that's before we turn on a camera or hire or employ talent and things like that. So it's a big business. It's massive in this country, and I think the broadcasters play a really big role in providing access and gaining access to the country.
Yeah, awesome. And look, obviously, if you guys can afford to dish out that sort of money to access these rights, it obviously shows that there's viewership and there's brands that are willing to spend the money. Well, why do you think Australian brands are, I guess, obsessed with sport and in being in and around sport over, let's just say, a traditional media buy?
Yeah, I suppose that reel that we just watched earlier, it kind of spoke to the fact that sport binds this country together. It binds Australians together. It's culturally who we are, and it's part of our DNA, if you will. I think the opportunity for brands is to capitalise on that tribalism of Australians in sport. We know through research that we've done, through campaigns and partnerships, that that brand love exists in an environment like sport where fans love their sports. So those kind of NPS scores or net promoter scores that we know our fans have for our brands translates to advertisers and clients that we deal with every day. So there's a huge role, I think, or a great opportunity for brands to leverage that, success and tribalism in sport in Australia.
You'd also say when brands are thinking about connecting with audiences, we know it's difficult to connect with them. So with live sport, you want to be there live. So there's not many cultural moments where you're all watching at the same time. So yeah, with everything else, you can watch it at your own time or stream it. You rarely want to watch a live event and watch it the next day because everyone in the office is talking about it. I mean, you're not going to watch the Man United game again, but you wouldn't watch it the next day once you heard the result, right? Sorry to dig that in. There will be a few Man United puns now.
No, just on that, 98% of sport is viewed live. You're not watching State of Origin the day after or the NRL Grand Final. So it's really important strategy for us at Fox Sports and KO Sports that live experience is extremely engaging for fans and our subscribers ultimately.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Miles. We'll come back to that when we speak to David around the different ways to activate sport, because I think obviously as marketers, ads these days are kind of becoming a bit taboo. Ads are out and people are using that talent to connect and drive those connections. So I think we'll come back to some of the different ways you can activate sport that are a little bit more, I guess, genuine and sincere and innovative. I'll throw over to Michelle now, and I think, look, as you said before, in your time at the NRL, you've done a lot in the community and education space, and I think sport for you guys, you're not necessarily trying to sell a product, so to speak, but you're trying to deliver some more powerful messages around health, education and things like that. Miles touched on the fact that this passion and this emotion and even this participation is a way in to drive this. How, from your experiences, how have you found that sport as a vehicle, whether it's athletes or participation, has driven some of these messages?
Thanks. Nelson Mandela said it better than I can ever say it, and your video shared that with everybody here, and congratulations to anybody who worked on that video. It truly was goosebumps. Sport is global. It's a language that everybody speaks. It's a language that everybody understands. We're very blessed in this nation that pretty much whatever sport you want to play, you have the opportunity to participate in. When you participate in sport, you end up with the connection, the passion and a sense of belonging. And I think when it comes down to basic human beings, that's what we want to do. We want to feel like we belong somewhere, and sport gets to do that. And when it speaks in a universal language and you have access to it, it's kind of the perfect vehicle to deliver any message or any deliverable out there. The NRL realised that quite some time ago. Through our community programs and with government partners and corporate partners, we've tackled some pretty meaty subjects. Sam, you touched on it too when you reflected back that even in the schoolyard, a school teacher can sit there and they can tell the kids to drink water and go to sleep and do their homework, but when a rugby league player or a rugby union player stands up and says it, they listen and they go home and they do it. So whether it's selling cereal or telling kids to go to sleep or delivering tough messages around mental health and reducing stigma or minimising domestic violence or violence against women and children, sport actually is, in my opinion, the perfect vehicle to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see it even, I guess, a lot of those grassroots programs, and I think that as a way for brands to connect is obviously is highly effective as well. You look at the Milo sort of scene in the cricket and NAB in the mini kickers with AFL. Let's throw over to David, who's someone who's actually doing this and doing it in a big way. And I think there's definitely over the years through Uber Eats, you guys have, I guess, set the standard with the Tonight I'll Be Eating piece with some big cultural moments. But I think if you look around sport in particular, you guys go pretty hard and really go in beyond just shooting a commercial with Kimmy K and blasting it everywhere. So from the AO perspective, which you were part of this year, which was done extremely well, as a brand and for everyone in the room, I'm keen to understand how you did that and what were the layers involved in that whole campaign.
Yeah, multiple layers. I think first off, from a brand perspective, you want to go where the fish are. So 90% of Australians are watching sport. So I think if I go back a couple of years and I speak to the team that kicked off our sponsorship with the AO, it's around making sure that we're from a brand perspective. We're only 5 years old, so go back 2 years. It's sort of very early stages, infancy of the brand. We wanted to be somewhere where there were a lot of people, a lot of eyes on, and it was something that, from a business perspective, made perfect sense as well. I think a lot of the work that we do from a brand perspective has to work for the business. It's quite simple. We have to make sure that, yes, we're doing great stuff for the brand, but there has to be a return for the business. So the AO was sort of the first biggest, I mean, it's top 1 or 2 sort of viewed sports or sporting occasion in the year. And it just made complete sense for the business to do it. And then actually putting that in play, and how do we actually set ourselves up to go and do sponsorship there takes quite a lot of pain. It's quite a lot of effort. Depends. We're getting better. I wouldn't say we're quite reached the ultimate yet, but we've started to plan a lot more. And I think the first couple of years were very, very quick to get into. I think last year we sort of had a 3-4 month run up to it. This year we're looking to kick things off on the 1st of July. So we've started to write our brief, which is the very first thing that we kick off with. Why do we actually want to do this? What do we actually want to try and achieve from that? And then obviously work with our creative partners to go on a bit of a journey to say, right, how do we actually take the message or the outcome that we want as a brand and get consumers to buy into it? So if I think about the Oz Open that we did this year, we kicked off around about September, October time. We had probably 4 ideas presented back to the team. Then you pick 1 or 2 of the ideas and you start to stress test it over a sort of a 2 or 3 week period. And part of that process obviously is looking at the partnership itself, what we can get out of our deal with the Oz Open, and then also looking about what channels would we potentially be working with. Obviously Channel 9 are the sponsor of the tennis, and then the big part of it comes down to influencers and talents. Obviously you mentioned earlier, Uber Eats have been quite prolific in the talent that we've been able to acquire. Probably a lot easier for me because I've come in sort of 2 or 3 years down, so people know who we are. But again, it's a huge part of what we want to try and do. We have a great, brilliant idea, great platform, but then having talent and our sponsorship takes it to the next level. So this year we had Sacha Baron Cohen, Nick Kyrgios and Ash Barty, and those discussions probably started about October, November time, and then we start the process to go through. And I'd be honest, and no offence to any talent in the room, it's probably one of the most difficult sort of steps of the process, because you're in control of a lot of things, but you're not in control of what that talent wants to do. And you sort of get two different types of talent, and no offence, Martin, you're a lot bigger than me here, but I think you get 2 types of talent, and you get talent that want to do it because ultimately they want to be part of something, and you get talent that want to do it for the money. And I think straight off the bat when you're starting the negotiations, you can understand that. And from a brand perspective, it's a bit of a leap of faith. We're making a big investment in talent to help drive what we want to do, and I think thankfully everybody I've worked with so far have been really accommodating, but it is a painstaking process because you get agents involved, talents have a certain way on certain things, you've got creatives, there's quite a lot of stakeholders.
Yeah, no, our talent team are here, and that they would echo that sentiment. I often come out of my office and hear them brokering what sounds like it's a UN peace deal, and it's for a $500 post. And we'll get to that. I think it's. I do want to look at working with talent from a multiple perspectives, because I think that's, as an industry, for us to progress and all understand how we approach these things. That we all need to get better so that we can do better as an industry and as a channel. So we'll come back to that. The next part is obviously the digitisation of sport, and we've seen that it's changed the game. It's flipped commercial models on its head. Rights and broadcasters are scrambling to the point now where, athletes in their own right are broadcasters, and they have their own IP, and it's at the point now where, as a brand and a marketer, I can sponsor the code, I can sponsor the team, or I can just pluck out someone that's really, really good at content and work with them and cut out that revenue that I'm giving to the brand to even put on the code. So we'll get to that, but I guess Miles, as the old guard who's done such a good job for so long, how are you guys responding to this digitisation, and are you scared?
Yeah, it is a scary, I suppose, landscape now. To your point, the fragmentation, I think you mentioned earlier, audiences are so hard to capture these days, and consumers are hard to capture. And I think from a Foxtel perspective, two of our biggest strategic pillars were about protecting the base, so our kind of set-top box, if you will, linear subscribers, to protecting them, and then growing our streaming platforms. Because streaming is I feel there's a new demographic, the streamers almost, that we need to be chasing from a broadcaster perspective. And a big part of that is KO. So a little plug here, KO's just ticked over 1 million subscribers the other week, and is really, really scaling from a streaming platform. We acknowledge this movement, if you will, moving away from traditional TV into the digital kind of digitisation of consuming sport, because we know that fans, they're savvy these days, sports fans in particular. They know what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, and how they want to watch it. And I think that personalisation of delivering sport rights and sport codes is really important to us at KO, and I think that's kind of what we put at the heart of everything we do. Is this personalised to our fans? Is this going to deliver them that meaningful connection with their favourite players, their favourite teams, their favourite codes and bodies? Even before we get into the commercial advertising side of things, which often is a bit of a bugbear of mine when I'm trying to sell it to someone. But at the heart of everything we do is the fan, and I think adapting to those trends into that digital world is really important for KO particularly.
Yeah, and I think you touched on that the streaming generation who might have KO on and be looking at Instagram and seeing what's coming out as well. So I think for me as a marketer, it presents that sort of multi-channel touch point a lot more opportunities, and I think it's good to see that even the pricing on KO has come down a little bit. So you can be on KO and you can work with.
I've given you a free subscription, haven't I, mate?
Maybe after this.
I think the thing that also that I'm seeing from a fan perspective with personalisation, though, is something that Twitch came out with the other day, which was fan-controlled football, which is effectively playing Madden, watching a live game, and making calls on what plays they should be making. That takes it to a whole nother level, where you've got a real engaged community that are probably sitting there going, they should have made that play, they shouldn't have done that, and then suddenly you get to vote on it through the community to say, I want a Hail Mary, or I want the running back to run. So things like that are starting to change the game.
Yeah, and look, Paddy, I mean, you've been involved in sport for some time now in your role at Publicis, and I guess, what have you seen from the changes? And if you had your chance now, unlimited budget, free reign, any client, I guess, how would you activate sport? What's your channel mix?
I think for me, when I'm thinking about it as a brand, and David spoke about it, is that when you've been approaching sport previously, it's a minefield. You don't know which way to go. You can go in through the clubs, the channels, the codes, and each of them give you a restriction in some way. And if you go with the talent, you realise in commercials you might be working with an NRL player and suddenly you can't have their club logo on it, so you have to have something different. So for me, it comes down to understanding what you want as the end result and what is the campaign you're trying to create. It comes down for me then to say, well, how are you evaluating the assets that you're being given, and what's the cost of those? Back in the day, people would pay for whatever they wanted because there was a demand for that. Now it's getting harder. Now those clubs and codes and channels are having to work a little bit harder now these days to justify that shirt sponsorship or that onboarding or the signage around the stadium. For me, if I was starting again, I'd probably be thinking now that yes, the channels are great from what they've been traditionally doing, but I'd be thinking now that, and this is probably more for players more than anything now, is that they are becoming publishers in their own right, as you mentioned. So you have to think about, it's not just the stories on the field, it's the stories in between the games that people want to hear about. And that access that you get through their channels is so much more important. And then it starts to question yourself with, well, how am I selecting the players that I'm thinking about? And do they have any influence? And if you look at the influence today, not just with brands, but if you think about the influence that they have on kids, hence why the European Super League wanted to change the game, as it were, is that how many kids did I suddenly see when Ronaldo moved from Real Madrid to Juve? Right, that's the influence that players have today, both with clubs and you know, I know as an Arsenal fan, it annoys me how many kids suddenly support Tottenham because of Harry Kane, so I'm looking forward to them going to wherever he's going next. That's really important. Man United, definitely. You know, and you've got to think about it from a girl's perspective. How many girls are supporting Chelsea because Sam Kerr is so prolific and they've just won pretty much everything? And then if you don't think players have influence and you want to work with them and select with them with what they have to say, whether they work in the community or they stand for something, you know, looking outside of this market, someone like Marcus Rashford completely changed the game. Right? You've got the English government saying to him, we are not going to feed kids outside of school. Marcus Rashford, who just plays for, Man United, he's an England star, sure, but he actually took on the government and they turned to take on that. So when I think about it now, perhaps the players themselves become more important than they've ever been before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting now is that even some of the players, the club sponsorship teams would be threatened by the fact that I can just ring Marty up and holler at you, and you know we can strike up a deal. Now, I guess moving into the talent space at sport, it's phenomenal, and we've gone there. But let's sort of sharpen the pencil and dive into talent. Now, this is an emerging space for athletes, and are your teammates and are athletes starting to cotton on to the fact that there's a big commercial proposition here for them?
Oh, look, I think there's huge awareness in that space. And it's funny, a couple of years ago, I used to get jokes thrown at me left, right and centre because of all these posts and all these things that I was doing with these with my partnerships with a few out there. And it became, you know, I was a laughingstock. But then once I started to educate these players on the value of your brand and who you actually are, like you're not just an NRL player or you're not just an athlete or a number. You're actually CEO of your own company. And once you actually understand the value of that, it becomes something much more, you know, stargazing than anything you would ever know. And now the players, they start coming asking, you know, what does this mean? What does that mean? How do I engage with certain brands, and how do I build my brand? Because I remember a couple of years ago, I was not the nicest person on the field, and it took me and my wife.
Are you now? You're better. Yeah.
I'm a lot better. I'm very sensible. Look, I was named a thug on the field, but I think it's taken us about 5 years now, and it's really humbled me. And these players really understand how that your on-field performance and your character on the field now really it affects yourself off the field, and the way that you carry yourself off the field as well. So, look, there is huge awareness, you know, to partner with brands off the field, but the thing is that some of these players don't know how to do it, and I think for myself personally, I'm helping educate these young players, but I think in a broader space of in sports, you know, we need to better educate these players and these athletes on the value of your brand and your persona, and then, you know, we can go from there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because going back to what I said before, you see that the influencers or talent or even athletes that do this really well, they produce content as good as a creative agency. They understand the data and the posting rhythms better than a media buying agency. And for them, they can kind of package up this whole commercial proposition. Now, I guess looking at some of the management and the representation of athletes and even influencers across the space, I think, are people looking to change managers or build teams? I think you see it in the US where people have a business manager and then they have the contract guy, and they're all driving Lamborghinis. Obviously, I'm not saying it's like that over here, but are people looking for new direction in terms of management?
Look, in terms of player management, the landscape has totally changed from what it used to be back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And nowadays, there are so many athletes out there that have either experience or not. They see what is actually happening and what you can actually do. So, look, I'm probably one of them. I probably think that I know everything, but I know I don't. And it's general knowledge, and obviously we go and do our research and try to seek out, but it's all about the connecting with the right people and seeking special knowledge or specialised knowledge. And with that, you get the right people that come in and do your contract negotiations, that do your partnership, your brand management, and also your social media, which in this day and age, your social media is a huge tool in which you see the young society now, they see huge value in which you see your transactional, your brands where you put up a post and you get paid and all sorts of stuff, and then the other stuff where you get, you build huge relationships. So, the landscape has totally changed, but a lot of athletes out there have definitely changed their views, but are definitely seeking special knowledge.
Awesome. Now, I guess we're covering this sort of premise now as athletes as their own entity, and I move over to Benny now. I guess you're working with some fairly major brands, the likes of Apple, My Muscle Chef, some Fitbits, and some major brands. Why do you think these guys are choosing to work with you and talent as opposed to just running Facebook ads? What do you think it is?
Organically growing my content from playing rugby and then moving out into the real world, I guess you call it, and working into that health and fitness space, and continually just posting literally what I do day in, day out without thinking too much behind it, which makes it really organic. I try and be relatable as possible. I guess that's kind of a job as a personal trainer, to be relatable to your clients and people like that, and then working on the back of that and selling programs that I create or something like that. But working with brands, being relatable, and then also not having the biggest following. I think there's sort of that high end where Uber Eats is going for the big dog, and then there's the little smaller people down the bottom that might not have the biggest following, but their community or their following is a lot more engaged.
Yeah, and absolutely, you raised a good point there of obviously, I think the whole market shift towards not making ads and looking for more of that publisher mentality. And I think, even Uber, and I've seen you guys with some recent content for Ben & Jerry's, are using other, I guess, content producers and people that can make bits and pieces of content that can come into ads and make them feel less like an ad and more like a challenge. So I think, look, there's definitely a role for talent, and we have debates in the office around what even is an influencer, and I think a lot of people think it's selling teeth whitening products and things like that, but we work with talent, and I prefer the name talent to be honest, because you've got photographers, videographers, academics, and people that can make amazing content, and then that middle tier is around that reach and that campaign activation, and you've got that top tier which is more that ambassador. And I think going back to Paddy's point, there is depending on the role and the objective, you can bring different people in, but across that full mix, there is definitely a role for talent. Now, Michelle, I guess, why do you think athletes pose a great opportunity for a brand over another influencer, for instance? Let's pip the pitch off.
I guess it was just mentioned then about the hyper engagement that is around an athlete, whether it's through their club, whether it's through their own brand that they're building or starting to build. They've got an engaged audience already. So that, I guess, makes them attractive to begin with. They have all of the skills and attributes that all of us want. We all want to be the best of the best. No matter what it is we're doing, we want to be the best. They set goals, they achieve goals. Their success is just all around them. And that's something that everybody wants a part of, I guess. The big part of that then is that curiosity, then not only what happens on the field, but then, like you said before, what happens in between the games. And that's where the interest then starts to peak with the consumer. We all want to know what they eat. We all want to know what they wear or what they're doing. And so if a brand then has the ability or to integrate into that in an organic way, in an authentic way, where it is part of that athlete's life. It just, all of a sudden, the brand becomes part of the heart and mind of the consumer who is following the person that they idolise. So for me, and you spoke about net promoter scores before, my data could be a bit off. It's probably pre-COVID. But when I was at the NRL, then we did a whole lot of research into what fans actually want, and the demographics are changing. You know, when I was growing up, my family was split down the middle between the Bulldogs and the West Tigers, and it didn't matter who played, it didn't matter what happened. You were one or the other, and you had to pick a side. It was war. It doesn't work that way so much now with the younger generations coming through. They have a club that they like, but in all honesty, they're starting to go the way the American sporting landscape has gone. They've started to become fans of people. And the brand now is the people. So it's these guys, it's Jake, it attaches to the people. So whatever the people are saying and doing and using and wearing, the consumers, whoever they be, are starting to follow that. So for me, that's why I see, and to your point before, the commercial departments are now starting to panic because the athletes are where the power sits. And then there's all those rules and regulations over that is so heavily regulated by the collective bargaining agreement that the codes have, that says you can't just have Marty, for example, in an ad. If you want to do that, you have to have 5 players in the ad. That then starts to dilute the message. When you can go direct, and you can go direct through DMs, like that becomes power. And what Marty was saying before, the awareness is there with the athletes, the know-how to do it is not. And I guess that's where our cheeky plug here, but our business came into that space pretty much because we wanted to be able to teach the athletes. We wanted to be able to share Marty's experience and my experience working in the code to be able to teach these athletes how to actually market themselves, how to position themselves, what their brand value is, who they are, what they stand for, and connect.
And I think you've right. It all comes down to this quality piece. And David touched on it before around some athletes or talent in general are a delight to work with, and others are it's just playing hard. So
he's good.
And great segue. It's like you've read my notes, Marty. Some of your partners are here in the room today, and I think you obviously get presented with a lot of opportunities. How do you decide what you kind of do and don't want to work with, and what's that? Yeah, what's that filter like?
Look, we do get many requests here to a lot of partners or brands that want to partner, but look, it all comes down to what our values are as a family, as individuals as well, and I think we're on the same frequency here with the way that we run our business, the way that we live our lives, our lifestyle, and it's all around family, respect, trust, and being true to yourself and that organic relationship. And we're fortunate enough, with Tamburlaine here. Thank you very much for coming out. Tamburlaine Organic Wines, it's funny enough, quick story. We went up to the Hunter Valley, it was at the end of the day, 5 o'clock, and I was pretending to look around at purchasing something, and I was done for the day, and I had my wife here, Michelle, just looking in, and it goes, we started, I didn't want to mention that, but yes, she was under the influence. So we jumped on their social media. They didn't have many followings, so one thing led to another. We started to tell them, ask him, how's your social engagement going? He said it's not that well. So then my wife got my phone. Hey, give me your phone. So I just tried to hide in the corner, put up a story. It was within an hour. We had a couple of thousand viewers online, and Mark, the owner, was just gobsmacked, and he wasn't aware of how social media was utilised as a tool, and your Instagrams, your Snapchats, your Facebook stories. He was just gobsmacked. It's like, how do we enter this realm? And well, we sat down, and next thing you know, we're happy that it's almost 3 years now that this relationship has organically come about, and it's it's amazing. And with that relationship, organic Tamburlaine, organic wines, it's organic wines, it's preservative free, and look,
I think you're going to get you're going to get an invoice after this.
I'm only saying this because I'm not a beer drinker. I don't drink beer, and it's all about wine and organic, and this is what we are, and goes back to our lifestyle and how we live our life. It's organic. It's no, excuse my French, bullshit free.
Yeah, awesome. And look, I think Marty, you're an example of, I guess, an influencer and athlete that's really good. And obviously across the influencer space, we get mixed reviews around outcomes for brands and outcomes for talent. And look, we've even got guys here in the room today that run some platforms, Swish. And there's all these different ways to connect with talent and outreach to talent, whether it's through the DM, whether it's using the platforms. And we use some technology here at Hello Social to kind of guide our decisions around looking at audiences and making sure that's in keeping with who we're trying to hit. But obviously there's some other values around brand and values and ability to create content. How would you advise that a brand would undertake selecting talent, Paddy?
I think the first question I want to know is how good is your wine cellar now? I mean, it sounds like it would be amazing. In terms of, I guess, selecting, again, it's a minefield like it is with selecting a club. There's so many influencers out there that you can select from, and there are many pieces of technology that can help inform that decision. I think with AIMCO, what we tried to do with the code of practice that we put out about 2 years ago now was to help people inform making those decisions, because we realised previously there was probably a thought or a feeling of lack of trust and transparency. And for those that saw the SBS The Feed piece the other day, that spoke about fake influencers and disclosure. It was a great ad for AIMCO because it brought that to the awareness. But when it comes to sporting stars, disclosure is not a problem. We know he's an NRL player. I mean, the disclosure piece has only ever happened once, and that was when back in the 90s, that Southampton footballer, Ali Dyer, played for Southampton, who was apparently George Weah's cousin, and he got on the field at Southampton and played for 5 minutes before they got him off. So he disclosed that he didn't get his disclosure right, but disclosure is a big problem. So with the code of practice, what we tried to do there is just to give everyone very clear steps around how you work with talent. And that comes from sporting talent through to working with influencers as well. Now, when you're working with a sporting talent, when they're in your ad, you are disclosing that you have a relationship and they're in your ad. But when you're using Instagram or previously with your wine partner, that was organic. You weren't being paid at that point. But the point at which you have a paid partnership, you have to start disclosing those things. So what we tried to do with the code of practice is say, understand the brief that you want to get out there and find the right influencer, vet them, of course. Whether you're vetting them from a traditional influencer piece, do they have anything in bad content out there, or have they worked with a competitor in the past? Same with sports stars. Have they done something that doesn't connect to your values? Have they done something that would upset your brand? Then from there it comes down to looking at the contract and making sure that everything's in there. There's nothing worse than going, oh, we'd love you to make an appearance, but you didn't include that in the contract, and you're not going to turn up if it's not in the contract. Right? And then, of course, after that, it comes down to the metrics and the reporting, and it's the same thing there. How you're getting access to that influencer's metrics and what you're reporting on is going to be so important. And that's going to be something else for the sporting stars to start understanding, that in the influencer space, we want to see their back-end first-party data. It's so important to report back on that. And obviously for sporting stars, you'd say, hey, we want access to that, and it's something that's going to be brand new for them. So yeah, when selecting talent, it's the same as working with TV or sports stars or influencers. You just have to go through the process and make sure everything's in there, vet, contract, get it signed off.
Yeah, and I think that's the work that all of us, whether we're a brand, a platform or talent, need to do together, is to understand what are those standards. Because I think, being in the middle, the brands expect those results. They want to see the reports. They want to see the data. And on the talent side, why is this person still annoying me? I've put this post out. So I think it's really good that obviously organisations like AIMCO have come about to help, I guess, bridge some of the gap and lift those standards and help each different player at the table understand what each other needs from each other. Benny, look, one final question before we wrap things up, because I can see that some people are thirsty. In terms of working with a brand, and I've seen some different qualities in briefs. Obviously, at the big end of town for an ambassador partnership, often the brand wants to meet and catch up and phone calls and all that sort of stuff to really ensure there's alignment. And then obviously moving and one of the reasons there's been some negative feedback from brands and talent on these platforms is it's quite transactional. It's like a job ad. So I think in your experience, and I think you've obviously worked with different brands under different commercial models, what makes a good brief and what helps you get the best outcome?
Yeah, I think you can be approached in many different ways, either via email or via DM and things like that. Personally, whatever comes in, I'd sort of look over it, I'd scope out that brand, and most of them I actually know because I'd use them normally or align with the values or whatever I'm doing. From there, it comes to an email. I look over the brief and have a personal relationship with the person I'm talking to. I find that works a lot better than the job interview kind of app or whatever it is, and you just sign up, put your money, your price in, and that's how it goes. And then obviously thinking about what that content's going to look like, what I can do with it, and if it actually fits my feed. I learnt the hard way a few times and signed up to something that I was just like, what am I doing? How am I going to present this? Not only is it wasting my time, but it's actually wasting their time. And I've actually tried to get out of a few jobs that way, and they wouldn't let me. But I'm like, well, I'll take your money then. But you're not going to get what you want, and I actually don't want to do it. But I mean, the brands that I've worked with, and most of mine are long-standing relationships. I've worked with a lot of my brands Before You Speak Coffee for 3 years, My Muscle Chef for 2 years. They align with my values. I use them every single day. The content that I create I don't even need to think about it. I just do it. It's just easy going. So having that personal relationship with someone to go over the content, go over the brief, go over the contract, both be happy with it. I guess it works better for both parties.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one thing, I guess, even from the brand side and the agency side here at Hello Social, we try and go through the managers and have some conversations with talent. And I think if there's one thing for the talent managers, that there needs to be a bit more trust around, obviously, allowing us to collaborate and together and to keep those walls up. So I think that communication, as you said, it's like briefing a creative agency. And I think there's a bit of transactional vibes to some influencer arrangements, and then we need to bring back some of that love as a whole industry. Look, I'm going to finish up with a quote, and we've kind of touched on this flavour. Liz Ellis, I should say, the Australian netball captain, wrote in the Sydney Morning Herald 2 days ago. Phenomenal article. When I was coming through the netball ranks, all of our media training was about what happened in front of the microphone. Speaking clearly and thoughtfully was encouraged. Saying anything controversial was discouraged. Lately, though, there's been a change. A realisation that sweetness and light does not sell. Character sells. Integrity sells. Controversy sells. The idea that women have to be perfect, sexy, or both appealing is changing. We now still see women of all shapes, sizes and opinions being fierce both on the court and off the court as well. Increasingly, their off-field presence is being assertive about addressing challenges within their sport and injustices outside of their sport. Perhaps it's because this generation of athletes has had to fight so hard just to get to the starting line, and they want to speak out to make it easier for the next generation. Now, to the panel, obviously, when you do work with a Fox Sports or a Code, it's heavily contracted. The risk is low. Working with talent poses great opportunities. Do you think that it poses a risk or an opportunity working with talent and the new types of talent? We all get to have a say.
We were joking before, Marty, about the fact that I think having talent, even on Fox Sports, being too censored or scripted, doesn't deliver the best television or the best ratings for us. So I think giving talent the opportunity to speak their mind and say what they want to say and be authentic, be themselves, is what generates those meaningful connections, I think, with our audiences, and then will ultimately deliver a better result for brands who want to connect with that conversation. And I think the generation, the streaming generation, we call them, they don't want to see the bullshit. They don't want to see the BS. They know if they're being sold to. So I think they will engage more with authentic talent and those speaking their minds.
I couldn't agree more. I think from an Uber Eats perspective, we're sort of well known for doing things that it's unexpected. And I think from a what I'm looking for the next 2-3 years is, again, we will definitely use talent. We see a huge value in talent, bringing things that other people can't bring to what we do. But we've had great success from it. But I think the way forward for us is making sure that we have those great relationships. We're really authentic. I really like the piece that Benny was talking around, like from my perspective, who probably controls the budget and working with talent, like that personal interaction and sitting across the table from someone and saying, this is what we want to achieve, what do you want to achieve? I think that's lost a little bit, and if we can actually get that back, that just gives so much more confidence to someone like myself who has to go back into the business, sign off X amount of dollars to get something done. If you lose that, then I think it's difficult. But if you have it, then you're going to fight so much more for it.
Yeah, I think for me, the closer you get to the talent, you're getting to the core of what it is and the connection to the fans. Because, yeah, once you go through the national teams or the clubs, when you finally get to the player, you can truly understand what it is that they want to do, such as aligning to your values or so on. So for me, it then comes down to, well, what is it that you want to, not only what can the brand get out of the player, but what can the brand provide the players? You know, have an actual conversation with them. What do they want to do with you? You know, I was talking to an AFL star not long ago, and I was saying to them about equality of sport and equal pay and so on. And yes, that's important. But if you dig deeper down to not just equal pay, it's equality of opportunity. And what that comes down to is things like they don't get the same training facilities, for example. Where can a brand provide that? You know, they don't get the same access to physiotherapists. They might get one physiotherapist a week versus, I'm sure, the Manly Seagulls, when they need a physiotherapist, they're available. So I think brands have to think not just taking away that connection for the fans, but where can they work with the player and provide something for them or back into the sport. I think that's really going to be important going forwards.
I guess there's both. I see huge opportunity. I think we're on the precipice of greatness when it comes to working with talent. Like any investment, and talent is an investment, wherever you're putting your budget and your time and your energy, it is that. Due diligence needs to happen. So going back to everything that we've all spoken about is that alignment piece, especially around brand alignment and values. If you put your due diligence in there and work with the right people and speak openly and honestly about what you want to achieve, and then I can't see anything other than opportunity there. If you don't, then you're entering the risk zone, and good luck.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same vibe here. Obviously, it's Toodle D and Toodle. Yeah. No, but look, it is definitely, there's huge opportunities and equal amounts of risk, investing into whether it's a team or an athlete. But, you just got to do your homework and, anyways.
Yeah, I agree. I guess there's an end goal for the creator and obviously the brand as well, and there's many ways to skin a cat, but for Uber Eats or something, I don't want a job, but I'm just saying, a mum could have a tough time, time poor and needs that Uber Eats, and she could stand in front of the kitchen and post how good it was Uber Eats tonight. The uninspired boys could make a bloody hilarious video. End goal is both the same things, getting more people to order Uber Eats, but there's a different way to get there. So, I definitely think it's here to stay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and volunteering your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope for everyone here it was a really worthwhile discussion. So a round of applause for our panellists. And then just finally to wrap it up, look, thank you all for coming. I know it's a big ask to come here and stand on a Thursday evening. But look, I think we're really passionate about brands and the talent space, and I think we have a big passion for making this talent space work. And I think with continued partnership, collaboration between platforms, brands, industry associations like the Australian Influence Marketing Council and agencies, we can all do our bit to, ensure that we all get those beneficial outcomes and we can improve this channel for all of us. So thank you again for coming, and we'll see you at our next event.